Hello, welcome to the Post Talk Podcast, the podcast where we interview post-production professionals in the film industry. Today, we are joined with Stephen Bodner, a colorist over at Light Iron in New York. Stephen mostly works on episodics. You may recognize his work on Netflix shows, Amazon, and Hulu+. Without further ado, here is Stephen Bodner. So, Stephen, thank you for taking time out of your day to chat with me.
My pleasure.
How did you first figure out that you wanted to be a colorist?
Well, going back to when I was younger, my father had his own offline commercial edit house in Manhattan for 36 or 37 years.
Wow.
So when me and my brother were younger, we used to travel into the city to my father's office and hang out with him. And at the time, my uncle worked there and some of my father's friends. So from a young age, I was always around film and editing. So I used to go in, mess around with him, cut actual negative back in the day. And then I used to go to actual, film timing sessions with him on his commercials.
Wow.
So from back then, I kind of got, took a liking to it. Didn't go straight into this field, though, got to be honest. I actually went, played sports in high school and college. Then out of college, I actually went into college actually for criminal justice. And I was actually a private investigator and a bodyguard prior to becoming a colorist.
Wow.
So I kind of went in a completely different direction. And then while I was doing that, I kept having, the desire to get into the film world. And one of my father's friends had a post house in Manhattan. And they opened the door for me, and I actually started in a shipping department during the day. So I've worked my way from a shipping department, all the way up to where I am now. And it's to get where I am today to when I started, it's been about 21 years.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah. There was no favors or hand-me-downs. It was, working days in a shipping department, going on cab runs, receiving film, then working overnights, for years. I did overnight dailies for many years in the film lab. So yeah, I've gone through the true gamut to get to where I am today.
That's awesome. So you come from around when film was around before SDR and whatnot. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we used to do, select transfers on the actual negative on telecines when I started. There was nothing was conformed. There was nothing like this. It was select transfers that were then, film was transferred to tape. Then it went back to editorial, and then they would take the selects and then cut them back together. So yeah, there was none of this, intermediate workflow that is there now.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you say you've been color grading for 21 years?
Well, I got into the industry 21 years ago. I started doing overnight dailies probably in 2005 was when I started doing actual color work, and that was doing overnight commercial dailies on actual film and transferring. And then, it took me I did dailies for, I want to say, 5 or 6 years. I did dailies before I got a chance to actually sit in the chair and do final work.
Huh.
So yeah, I mean, I've been doing finishing color now for about 11 or 12 years.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a lot of dedication too.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Do you prefer Resolve or Baselight?
I work on Resolve.
Nice.
Really? Yeah, when I came up at Deluxe, and when I came up at Deluxe, I was doing overnight dailies, like I said, and they only had lusters at the time. So I actually started doing color grading. My final work started on actual luster, and then as time went on, and then once Company 3 and Deluxe merged, that's when the Resolve started coming into Deluxe in New York, at least. I'm sure it was different on the West Coast, but in New York, we didn't get Resolves until Deluxe and Company 3 started, when the merger happened. So yeah, but I've been on Resolve ever since. I love it.
Yeah, awesome. Have you worked in HDR?
That's all I work in pretty much these days. I would say like 90% of my work these days is episodic work. And a lot of it is for the streaming platforms. So I would say, I want to say right now, out of every show I'm doing is Dolby Vision.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything is HDR. I mean, I have a home setup right now, and I have, an X300 in front of me with a full DaVinci panel. Yep. I have like 50 terabytes of storage at home, and I'm linked to our office in Manhattan. So,
wow.
Yeah, pretty much everything we work on these days, especially in episodic, is Dolby Vision and HDR.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. And what is it like to work in HDR?
You know, that, yeah, you can, you know, you retain more in the highlights. There's a lot more information in the highlights and the lowlights. You know, the color gamut is wider.
Hmm.
So you know, you can pull out a lot more things in HDR, but it's, you know, the trick is nobody wants the HDR to be crazy bright and contrasty and colorful just because it can be.
Hmm.
Most of the bigger filmmakers, they want the HDR to feel as close to SDR as possible,
Mm.
with just like, you know, specular highlights and things like that, you know, going a little hotter. But overall, they, you know, a lot of them don't want that really bright HDR, you know, like poppy look. It's more, you know, how do you keep them both looking the same?
I see. Yeah, yeah. Because we've been on SDR for a long time now.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
HDR is still in its primitive ways, I would have to say, but it's getting there, you know, to where
yeah,
I think everyone will be trying getting their hands on it, really.
yeah. Well, I mean, you know, even all your phones, like iPhones and everything, they all have HDR. Everything you're watching, you know, all the streaming platforms, everything's HDR. So, you know,
Wow.
all the LG, all the TVs nowadays you buy, you know, they all have Dolby Vision or HDR capabilities. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's definitely, everything's going to have an HDR pass for sure.
Yeah. How was working with Scott Frank?
Scott Frank is awesome. I mean, he's a definite talent. He's incredible. I worked with him first on Godless for Netflix, and now more recently we just worked on Queen's Gambit together. It's been the same team, so it's, you know, Scott's the director, Steven Meisler was the DP, the editor Michelle Tesoro, and then like all the AEs, coordinators, everybody's been the same. So it's great working with him. I mean, he lets me, basically I get involved from before even daily start for his stuff. You know, I start speaking to them about the look and what they're going after. You know, we create a LUT before they even shoot camera tests.
Mm.
So I'm involved from before the shooting even starts.
Mm-hmm.
Then once dailies kick off I mean, this is pretty much for all of my big shows, you know. But when dailies start, I'm always involved with dailies. I oversee dailies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get the pics uploads just like editorial does. I like to watch them and get through them.
Mm.
And then, you know, I'm always speaking with, you know, the DP or Scott during the production. They'll send me tests and what do you think? You know, what do you want this to look like? Do you have any ideas what we should make this look like? You know, it's a huge collaborative experience with them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's great. I mean, we had a great time on both Godless and Queen's Gambit, and
Mm.
you know, just creating the different looks and the feels. And Scott gives us a lot of freedom to you know, express ourselves. He doesn't come in and go, "This is exactly what I want." You know, he'll come in and, like, you know, if I say to him, "Hey, Scott, I see what you're doing here, but you know, can I show you something else?" And he'll be like, "Absolutely, go for it. What do you got?"
Okay.
So
Nice.
working with him, yeah, he's great. I mean, it's a pleasure working with him and that team. You know, hopefully it'll continue on. But yeah, working on his shows, they're really good looking shows. They're well written. The
Mm-hmm.
acting's great. I mean, from, you know, bottom to top. I mean, they're just top notch productions, and I'm glad to be a part of them.
Right. That show is actually what made me want to reach out to you. I was watching it and I IMDb'd and I was like, "Who is this?"
Yeah,
There you go.
I mean, yeah, they would. I mean, in that show actually, I graded the entire thing from my house.
Oh
I didn't, you
wow.
know, that was that show in particular was, you know, 100% graded from home during the pandemic.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
mean, right now my system is set up in my dining room as well, because everything was such a last minute that, you know, it was a Wednesday afternoon at work when they were like, we got to think about sending people home and stuff. And
Wow.
by Friday, I had a full system at home set up and I was working from home.
Dang.
And yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I tell people that all the time, like, yeah, I graded the Queens, the whole thing at home on my dining room table. Everyone's like, you're kidding, right? I'm like, no, not at all. We did, you know, iPad Pro reviews. You know, we
Oh.
sent files. We did Streambox live sessions. But yeah, everything was done live from home.
Wow, that is cool.
Yeah.
How often would you recommend for people who are, like, let's say, writing a script or a project, if for them to get a colorist early on, like in pre-production?
I mean, I always like to get involved as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, especially, like, you know, if it's people I work with a lot, or, you know, even if I don't, if they'll allow me to read scripts prior to, you know, prior to even shooting, I always ask. And if they give it to me, great. If they don't, you know, that's their prerogative and I'm not going to fight that. But yeah, for me, it's like as soon as I can get involved with the filmmaker or the creatives or DP and director, I want to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because a lot of time, I mean, most of the time, you know, in this industry, as you know, you build relationships and people keep coming back. So the more, the more comfortable you get with each other, you know, and the better shorthand you have, the easier projects go. So, you know, I think getting myself colors, you know, for looks of things, you know, I mean, me personally, I would love to get involved at the start for everything. You know, I just think it makes the end product, you know, better because, you know, you're not coming to the end, you know, the end point and going, all right, this is what we want. And then you're looking at what you're shooting and you're like, this may not work exactly how you're thinking. So
right.
You know, having the input of everybody all along the way, I think it just makes it a smoother process.
Absolutely. Can you make this look like Tenet? Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. But very cool. Yeah. And everything that you do work on, you know, from commercials, episodics. What is your most favorite thing to color?
Right now, I would say, I mean, episodic for sure. I mean, right now, that's the basis of my work. I do a lot of television right now. And commercials, I don't do that many of. I'll do one here or there, just because I'm more I'm more locked down to the long form. So episodic, like I said, and then I'll do a feature like whenever we could fit them in, or if it's a DP or director or showrunner that I know that has a feature and wants me to work on it. Obviously, I make time for it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I enjoy episodic. It's the episodes usually depending on if it's network or if it's like a Rammy for Hulu or whatever it is. Half-hour shows I'm usually done with in under 2 days with reviews.
Wow.
Hour-long shows I usually get like two days to color it myself, and then it's like a few hours of review. So it's like under 3 days for an hour-long show. So the turnover, there's constantly new material. And it's the different shows that are coming in and out, different looks. So I like to be able to, get my eyes on different material, not just be, it be monotonous with the same thing all the time.
Do you ever look at other colorists' work and you're like, I wonder how they did that? Or you're like, man, that looks so cool.
Of course. I mean, I'm not one of those people that, is arrogant or, has an ego like that. I mean, if I know like a colorist that, if I like something and I know the colorist, I'll call them and be like, dude, this looks amazing. Like, nice. This is awesome, Or, if I like something and I see it, I'll, you grab a still of it, pull it into the box and mess around. A lot of it, a lot of people with the custom LUTs and curves and everything else, there's a lot of that going on. It's not just straight color correction. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I always do that. I have no problem sending, accolades and shout outs to people when they do good work. I mean, that's what it's about. Mm-hmm. And, it's all one community, and this community is not very big.
Right.
So I don't feel a need to, to dismiss anybody else's work. I mean, they teach their own. There's enough work out there for all of us. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. So I'm a very young colorist. I'm about only maybe 2 years in. I work as a color assist. Right. And anybody else who listens to this podcast, I know that some of them are about my age and they're about like a year in, 2 years in. Maybe could you give any advice maybe to someone who wants to break in as a colorist?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, if you're an assist especially, I mean, what I did was, I would watch the colorist I was assisting for. I would literally be almost on his lap, watching everything he's doing on the board, watching his scopes, watching the picture.
Right.
And then when he was done, what I would do is I'd grab stills, and then I would ask him, like, hey, do you mind if I mess around with this? And I would have them clone projects for me.
Very cool.
And then I would pull in their still, and then I would sit there and try to match their still without applying the grade. Just like by eye, watching it, looking at the scopes, figuring out where the colors are going. And then I would sit there and try to match stuff like that. The best, you have to get your hands on. Like, I know people do the tutorials and all that, but you have to really just sit down, get in front of a machine, start twisting the knobs. You have to play with the buttons, understand what everything's doing, what's going to happen if you do something, at the beginning of the chain or the end of the chain. You really got to get your hands dirty. And I would just say, for me, I was lucky. I had a lot of big colorists that I came up under that were really knowledgeable, and they had no issue. I asked a ton of questions. Almost too many at times. I remember there was one colorist back in the day that was joking around with me, and he's like, he looked at me during a session. He's like, assistants are meant to be seen and not heard. And I was like, oh, okay. In other words, he was telling me to shut up, because I couldn't stop. I'm always like, wait, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And I just got to a point where he's like, excuse me. I was like, all right, point taken, point taken.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say you just got to keep going at it. Like I said, ask as many questions as you can. If you don't understand something, most people are more than willing to help out and to spread the knowledge and spread the love. I mean, like I said, it's a small industry, so there's no reason not to help the up and comers. I mean, I was lucky, like I said, to have people help me, and that's why I do the same. I've had the guy that works under me. He assisted me. He's now working his way to being a colorist himself. I've had him with me for 7 or 8 years now.
Wow.
And he, when he first started, he would literally just set me up, like, do my routes and get everything lined up and be like, all right, dude, you're cool. And now, from that, I've taken him under my wing, and now he's actually doing his own shows, and, he helps me out a lot. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, that's all the time that we have. I want to thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. And to anybody listening, you can find this podcast on YouTube or our Instagram at the Post Talk Podcast. Is there anything that you would like to plug yourself?
I mean, you can follow me on Instagram at Steven.Bodner.
Okay, very cool. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for talking to me, Steven.
All right, thanks, man.